Top decks, post, Supreme Dark. So we have something to actually look forward to here in January. Make sure you guys smash the crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't, miss out on more Oz comments. We're going to start off over here with talking about Nilos' impact on the game. So the third Malcharmy is going to be touching down, which is actually going to have a little bit of an impact on the course of the game. I wanted to lay the groundwork here for you as, we're starting here to remind people that, yes, while Malice is still going to be a top contender, you're going to have a chance to Nilos them and draw into other hand traps, which can technically... Some of the rogue decks might see a little bit of a shift around out here, depending on Nilos' matchup into Malice. When one of the top two decks out here has another counter kind of coming down, I think it's very important to kind of, see and analyze that so you can get that. So yes, you do have a Nilos coming. You do have a fantastic opportunity to kind of fight back against one of the other halves of the format. And it's looking pretty good, actually, for that. So, starting off, we have the Primite Fiend Smith deck. Now, can't put Blue Eyes just yet. We're not there yet. But I do think that the TCG is going to mess around with the Primite build and make an attempt to see what they can kind of do to challenge the meta with this. Now, keep in mind, we've already seen a very early build to Fiend Smith stuff a while back, which was kind of using a similar idea with this. You use a lot of hand traps, and you'll use the Primite stuff, kind of be this engine to kind of get the deck rolling, which, I mean, as long as you can, get the White Dustin onto the field via Tremors, congratulations, you're off to the races. I don't know if we will be using the Rex Tremende in our builds. That part is to be determined, but I'm leaving the Fiendsmith stuff, at least variations of it right here as well. You've got the Unchained Magical Musketeer stuff as well, but these are definitely one of the more interesting contenders that we can really see in the future of the meta here. Azamina White Forest. So this deck is projected to be one of the stronger builds out here. Now remember, the TCG doesn't get to do the whole OSS White Forest stuff that we really were wanting to mess around with out here, because thank you, Konami, for taking care of OSS and making it so that we don't have to deal with those shenanigans. And you know what? I'm A-okay with this. Not having to deal with that BS, 150% absolutely welcomed. But for all intents and purposes, being able to kind of bridge the gap now and use the Deception package to make this deck a lot more consistent was pretty much all you had to give to it. And I think a lot more people are going to kind of mess around with this deck now that, we've kind of got the missing piece coming forward here. I'm not exactly sure where our power scaling is really going to lie with this one, if you want my honest opinion, but I think people are definitely going to be here to try this on out. So let's see what we can cook up here. Chron. This deck, I think, definitely exists in the... I didn't want to put it where I put it, but kind of thinking about it and how this deck shows up in the OCG, even the builds without Baron DeFleur out here, it's usually riding in a pretty decent rogue position. But kind of considering, some of the other decks that we have rolling out here, I think Chron might actually just kind of be like a little bit of a secret powerhouse out here. We'll have to wait and see, because Chron truly is the most wild card of wild cards on this list of things. We'll have to wait and see how the meta develops around it, but being able to do some turbo synchro plays, obviously Dimensional Barrier's running around, so you might be able to stop them pretty freely, especially since you're probably already playing Barrier for Rizal and Tenpai anyway. Multi-purposing functions will always be your friend. Alright. Labyrinth. Labyrinth has had a surprising amount of showing as of late. To be fair, I'm just going to kind of call this deck the rolling Dimensional Barrier deck, because all this deck's purpose is right now is just to spam Dimensional Barrier and just paralyze your opponent in fear as you're rolling through these. Same thing with, the infinite uses for the Destructive Daruma cannon out here as well. And that's what Labyrinth does best. As long as you can keep up the constant barrage of traps, congratulations, your deck does what it needs to do. Especially when you get into the Labyrinth lady and you start pinging those other options away from your opponent. Yeah, you get into some really good control aspects. So, We are leaving Labyrinth in the top 10 for sure. I think it's one of the stronger decks, especially with Ryzel's development out here. And, you know, just being able to destruct a Daruma Cannon and send a whole crap ton of links to the graveyard, especially in the Malice matchup. You're really just good off right now. So, well, we'll see where developments take us in the back row department. Fire Kings. This was a hard one. The only reason why I left Fire Kings kind of sitting in the top cut was its numbers are still pretty much there. So you lost OSS. You still have Ukalonix, you still have Chron, you still have the big fire chicken, you still have, you know, all of your control aspects, you're still able to set up disruptions. You know, you're getting a little bit extra more support in the future, depending on, you know, if you want to try out the White Forest stuff in here. I don't recommend it. It's like some I saw a couple of like weird hodgepodge piles out here that people were trying with this, which was just super weird. But I guess where there's a will, there's a way for really, really bad ideas to kind of flourish. So, yeah, Fire King's still going to be sitting down here. I mean, being able to do the revolving door of pops and try to control the field from there is always going to be one of the strongest things that this deck has going for it. Next up is Tenpai. Yeah, that's right, everybody. So what do you want me to tell you? So Tenpai's lost a little bit of its gas in the very early stages of the format. I mean, that's to be expected, right? Like, the surprise factor's there, but some Tenpai players can still get you, all right? They're still, this deck can still sack you to no way, and the fact that they just got Nilos as well now means that their Malice matchup now feeds them even more cards to find those resources to be able to set up. That's all that they needed, all right? You cannot forget, and this is what I was talking about, you know, when we said Nilos at the beginning of this video is going to be one of those major, you know, swingers in certain decks. Tenpai is one of those. I definitely tell you, I'll probably see some of those cited for Tenpai. I expect Tenpai to kind of develop into this funny or crazy little hodgepodge destructive monster, just for 3 more draw cards to be able to punish the opponent. And then, of course, Kashtira, mid-range control, that's right. And of course, I mean, this is also going to go for all your variants as well, like the Fiend Smith piles, and, you know, pick your poison. Fenrir and Unicorn are still going to be the two that are going to be running this. There's literally no other major change to this deck. I don't even think you give a crap about Nilos in this deck as an option for the deck to play. Like, it was never being used against you, but just... Do the builds even play Shifter anymore? Have we shifted away from a Shifter meta? I think we have, actually. There were a few people that were still talking about trying to play Shifter, and it's cool as long as you don't run into Malice. If you run into Malice, well, you know, yikeroos. Yeah, a little bit of a sad moment there, but just control your opponent. All right, depends on the build, but you got some things. Yubel. Hey, so speaking of Fiend Toolbox out here, this deck still is kind of sitting at the top. I was looking at a lot of the data for the last couple weeks of events as we were kind of rolling on in here. And I was like, you know, no matter how things go, like, Yubel is still kind of like the gold standard for what we consider to be, like, okay. You're still able to do all the pops, do all the setup. You have the damage reflection to force, you know, bad rogue decks to kind of play into you. And you just damage reflect, and your opponent's just like, oh, sure, man, I love this game. And you can tell that they're frustrated, they're not happy. You have all of that still. That hasn't changed. I mean, the only thing was, oh boy, the ban list took away some of your consistency. That's cool. Deck is fine. All right. And you are not going to see any sort of major change between that right now. So, you don't even really get anything on the next set either. Like, Nilos is not going to be anything that this deck's going to even want to look at playing. Your top two are Malice, of course. I mean, what do you want me to tell you? The Cyber's pile goes. You've got the Sky Striker variation. You got the Kashtira version, which I think more people try to like that one a little bit more. And then you have more of the pure build. So you have Fiend Smith. Oh, and you have Fiend Smith. So you have 4 builds of this engine going around. Like, talk about developments in the meta, man. Like, one deck has 4 variations to itself? Yeah. kind of crazy, right? And then Rizal remains on the top. You have both the Fiend Smith version and the pure version of this deck. Honestly, both versions are incredibly good. Pure is definitely the weaker of the two, if you're looking at it. And the Fiend Smith version, I think, handles other builds that have the Fiend Smith package developed in it, for sure. But in terms of, setup, deck is doing just fine. So what do you guys think about, Supreme Darkness meta? Please leave a comment down below, tell me what you guys think. And of course, things are probably going to change as more of the groundwork becomes laid, but just some early thoughts. You guys have a good rest of your day, alright? Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.